Howdy. When it comes to animated movies that at least claim to be based off a book, we can sometimes get a movie that brings a new life to the original book, bringing the book's original message out to a brand new audience. But sadly, we also get plenty of miserable, cash-grabbing, watered-down garbage piles that desecrate the original author's writing. And honestly, we've got an interesting chunk of both this time. So let's check out the top 5 best and worst book-based animated movies. And of course, if you do have a differing opinion on these movies, that's great. It's just my silly personal opinion, and I'd love to hear what you like or dislike about these movies in the comments below. Also, I'm excluding Disney as many of their animated movies are loosely based on books. Anyway, on to the countdown. For the 5th worst, The Lorax. Well, let's start with what is probably the most bright and shiny Dr. Seuss remake, with no inherent soul whatsoever within. Every question, every silent thinking moment the viewer was given in the original book and the original movie is filled out with fairy floss oversimplistic pusillanimous pap. The city of Whoville is made of rubber, which is an excellent representation of how this movie feels. Like it's rubber and artificial, instead of a thought-provoking tale on the impact we have on our world around us.
Wow, what does that even mean?
We have your typical cutesy tale about a boy named Ted trying to win a kiss from a girl named Audrey, who also happens to be an environmentalist. Voiced by Taylor Swift?
Did your ball land in my backyard again?
Jeebus, how do the world's most powerful public figures keep ending up with such bland film roles? Are we going to get Obama voicing generic cat number 2 next? Though that actually sounds pretty awesome, I'd probably go see that. Anyway, Ted is off to bring her a real tree from the Onceler. I don't suppose he could genuinely care about not seeing the world turn into a flaming dumpster pile? No? Fine.
Do you want a tree?
Yes, yes.
So now with the Onceler we've got dancing bears, painfully floundery and meaningless song and dance sequences. Like, seriously, why do we need a long guitar song from the Onceler about truffula trees?
These truffula trees are just what I need.
Even Danny DeVito, who plays the Lorax, couldn't quite bring the charm to the movie for me, and I like to hear him in a reserve role, though the movie is probably better off with him than without him. And what do we get in the end? A completely happy, oversimplified ending that completely misses the point of the original Lorax story. In fact, they even give us a big corporate bad guy to tribe against and hate. No, we can't have the viewers question their own way of life and what they take for granted. No, because the shareholders say that might deter future viewers. It might make them uncomfortable. The message of the original Lorax is that there is no bad guy. We all play a part, and that we alone can make a change in ourselves and perhaps slightly better the world for tomorrow. But nah, bring in the big bad corporation guy to stoop it down the plot.
Let it die, let it shrivel up and come on, who's with me, huh?
The original Onceler isn't just an unrelatable supervillain. He's a reflection of ourselves. He's potentially you, and he's most certainly potentially me. There's not a lot wrong with this movie on a technical level. I mean, the CG will probably lure you in. But there's nothing behind that CG but an ugly defilement of the original message in a time where that message is more important than ever. And the 5th best book-based animated movie is Horton Hears a Who. Ah, now this is more like it. In terms of Dr. Seuss remakes, I consider this the best of all. I mean, look at the design of these characters. This is about the best CG depiction of Dr. Seuss I've ever seen. Unlike the Lorax, the characters are vibrant and different, while not being too obtrusively garish. The colours aren't so overly saturated I feel blinded every time I look at the screen. I like the small details, like how the mayor tiptoes across the floor, or the pleasant design of their eyes. There's a real gentleness and grace to this animation style. Jim Carrey plays Horton, and like Danny DeVito, I actually enjoyed hearing him in a more reserved role.
No! Please, no! Oh, this isn't fair!
You wouldn't think a giant grinning elephant would be a relatively reserved role, but Jim Carrey makes it work. What I like about this Horton movie is it actually keeps the original Dr. Seuss message intact. The story still encourages kids to acknowledge the potential insignificance of our own existences without being too confronting. This is illustrated great through the tiny city that Horton is holding. And it does this message while still keeping it very light-hearted. And Seuss's original message of facing skepticism is also kept intact. And when every Who in Whoville has to speak up in order to save their tiny world, it's just as memorable in the movie as it was in the book. For the 2 people who don't know, Horton's a pachyderm that finds a tiny microscopic world on top of a clover, and it's up to Horton and all the citizens of Whoville to save their society from extinction. Unlike the Lorax remake, there aren't excessive pop culture riffs here, but there's still a sense of modern realization to it. It also keeps that sense of rhyme rhythm from the original Dr. Seuss book.
Hello?
And by noon, poor Horton, more dead than alive, had picked, searched, and piled up 9,005.
But most importantly, it doesn't water down the message Dr. Seuss tried to convey to the reader. I mean, it's a 90-minute Dr. Seuss book, so there's going to be a bit of movement purely for the sake of entertaining kids and filling time. But to me, it's a drastic improvement over Lorax and Grinch. Horton Hears a Who is creative in design and faithful in spirit. Blue Sky Studios are to be commended for this adaptation. And for the 4th worst, The Grinch, the 2018 version. Don't get me wrong, this is perfectly well animated and serviceable on the surface. But jeebus, it's a whole lot of nothing. If you do like this one, I get it. There's nothing offensive about it. But that's just the thing. There's nothing offensive about it. This Grinch is so weak and inoffensive that I barely remember anything about him. I guess if you want a child-friendly version of an already children's book character, maybe the Grinch is appropriate? Well, this is the most demure, tame Grinch you will ever lay eyes upon. Unlike the books or movies from the past, he's no longer a diabolical monster. He's the ultimate example of watering down a character to be as inoffensive as possible to the largest possible audience. Because I guess that's what the shareholders wanted. In fact, he rarely ever even looks angry. A lot of the time he just looks outright bored. The Grinch himself looks like he's in a permanent state of boredom, unable to even summon the energy to be angry. It almost made me miss the Jim Carrey Grinch. At least he gave an interesting, if cringe-worthy performance. At least it was memorable. I still remember that tablecloth scene. Don't get me wrong, Benedict Cumberbatch, aka
Dr. Strange.
Oh, you're using a made-up name.
reads his Grinch lines fine, and I find it entertaining to listen to him, but that's because he's Benedict Cumberbatch.
Let me guess. Small child, December 20th, rapidly searching for a really important lost letter. Might it be your list of demands to Santa?
This Grinch doesn't shut himself away from humanity, becoming more bitter and twisted from his isolation. Nope, he just strolls around town like anybody else. But oh no, he causes minor inconveniences. This is not a fearsome mountain dweller who could turn on you at any second. It's a slightly crotchety neighbor who probably just needs a friend to chat with down at the pokies. Oh no, he slightly poked that snowman too hard. Oh, woe is me. To me, this is just an hour of inoffensive Grinch padding with very talented actors with nothing to work with. I mean, look at this. Oh no, we can't actually have termites in his smile. That might be 3 seconds of mild discomfort for the under 7. In fact, the original Grinch was so evil that he had to have a surgical resizing of his heart in order to even feel a shred of empathy for the Whovians. This Grinch just feels like a guy who missed his morning coffee. Honestly, if you go back half a century, you can get a far more memorable Grinch movie made by Chuck Jones, the creator of Looney Tunes, with an actually nasty Grinch with an actual turnaround. To me, Illumination's Grinch may be high budget and gentle enough, but there's nothing memorable about it. It certainly won't offend you, but for a Dr. Seuss adaptation, this is a tragically inoffensive sea of bland. And for the 4th best, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. Although I always enjoy watching this movie, Am I the only one who ever wondered how this town ever came down with excessive diabetes? I mean, the main story is that Clint the scientist is able to solve the town's problems by raining food from the sky, including metric tons of ice cream, donuts, and, well...
a pizza stuffed inside a turkey, the whole thing deep fried and dipped in chocolate.
But maybe I'm just overanalyzing the movie. I get that the story probably wouldn't have been as interesting if Clint had made well-balanced meals with a side of vegetables rain from the sky. Like, woo, salads raining from the sky today. Whoop-de-doo. Anyway, this is the kind of creative movie I could purely appreciate from an animation standpoint. The colors, the sound, the atmosphere of Cloudy Meatballs just jumps out at the viewer. And apart from the mayor, I can't think of any character in this movie I didn't enjoy. Flint and his dad both have a nice dynamic. Sam's a charming protagonist alongside Flint. She's not just your typical news reporter. And even minor characters like Police Officer Earl are very memorable.
This contact lens represents you.
All right.
And my eye represents my eye. Okay. I got my eye on you.
The movie's also got a bit of a political edge and a sense of anarchy to it, particularly when things start to go haywire. There's some good messages about greed, not trying to please everyone, and acknowledging failure. My main nitpick of Cloudy Meatballs is the narrative of the characters is pretty predictable. I've definitely seen Flint's scientist who wants to be popular stereotype before, and I've never found it all that fascinating. We know the town's going to accept him, he's going to find someone that likes him, he's going to reconcile with his dad, yada yada yada. But as I said, that's not what the movie's about. Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs is about telling a sweet, silly, simple story. A story about food falling from the sky, and a guy reconciling with his dad, and about falling in love with a nice lady. And for the third worst, the ant bully. I think if DreamWorks and Pixar have taught us anything, it's that it's very difficult to make ants look cute, sympathetic, or even likable. I mean, many kids discover the power of fire and a magnifying glass through them. Unless you are Pixar and literally have hundreds of millions of dollars to drop on your movie, chances are the insects are going to look ugly. Well, to start with, most of the dialogue is really bad.
Please wipe my little bottom for me. Wipe me. Oh, please. Wipe me.
Give me that stupid contract.
I mean, I guess its toilet humor is a passable diversion for kids, but I never connected with any of the characters, or the message for that matter. I didn't like the main character Lucas at all.
Just stop it, Mom. I don't have any problems except for you treating me like a baby.
He plays far more the typical Milo brat from Mars Needs Mums than someone that's actually relatable. And most of the other characters aren't a lot better. The bully's just your typical bully because he's a bully, which is so played out at this point.
Well, what are you gonna do about it, huh? Nothing, because I'm big. And you're small.
The story's basically that Lucas is terrorizing an ant colony because he's being bullied at school. But the ant leader uses a magic potion so he can make Lucas small and teach him a lesson. But then he and the ants get their revenge on the bully, because I guess revenge is an interesting life lesson? It feels like it kind of nullifies the whole respect everything message they were hammering home in the premise. That being said, the movie has some pluses. There's some nice voice actors in here like Julia Roberts and Meryl Streep, but even their pleasant familiar tones just couldn't quite save the mediocre dialogue for me. Ant Bully isn't insultingly bad, but it did really remind me we definitely don't need any more ant movies. And for the third best book-based animated movie, The Secret of NIMH. Aha! An excuse for us to talk about a Don Bluth movie. The master renegade of the great Disney exodus. You bet I'll take it. I get a real kick out of the Lone Creature's Odyssey plot. It's part of why I love the games Abe's Odyssey and Abe's Exodus. Particularly when the worlds are as ruthless and unpredictable as, well, our own world. And since Miss Frisbee is such a strong, admirable leading character, I found myself immersed in her journey, as well as collaborating with her fellow creatures and saving her son.
Please, sir. I'll do anything to save Timmy.
But it's not just an exodus. It's a grander story of animals gaining sentience through human experimentation. What happens when they gain knowledge, a sense of morality, and begin to establish a society? There's an underlying question of science versus nature versus the unknown in this movie, creating something truly beautiful and engaging. I've yet to see a premise quite like Miss Frisbee's story. She's a widow out to save her son, that's it. Bloof's animation style has this way of capturing the mysterious, the fantastic, and the fearsome so well. Over 30 years later, The Secret of NIMH still feels powerful to me, and it's definitely one of Don Bluth's masterpiece movies. And for the second worst, Tom and Jerry in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Yes, number 2, believe it or not, it actually does get worse than this. Ah, finally, a truly abysmal movie production, using only the lousiest and bargain basement CG to assure they turn a profit, with those unknowing enough to accidentally pick it up. What's weird about this movie is I get this visceral feeling of dirtiness whenever I watch it. Like, it feels like I'm desecrating something beautiful just by laying witness to this thing's existence.
My chocolate! My poor, sweet, beautiful chocolate!
It's like clicking a surprise egg video out of curiosity. I feel like I'm perpetuating something horrible. This is a movie that exists purely because Warner Brothers owns tons of different intellectual properties, then decided to see what happens if they randomly smush them together. It's just dumbfoundingly bad.
Simply look around and view it.
The kind of movie where you feel surprised if a critic ever gives it anything more than a 1 out of 10. And oh jeebus, the animation. So many of the weird plastic CG shots we get here just look wrong. But you know, I was hoping for something truly intensively repulsive, and Tom and Jerry Willy Wonka delivers. Tom and Jerry aren't even really placed into the Willy Wonka universe. They kind of just intercut into the world separately, with their own weird random moments. And Tuffy. Yes, Tuffy is here again, and this time he wants to be an Oompa Loompa.
I'm Tuffy. I'm an Oompa Loompa.
I have a mousetrap and a boot in this factory. One of them will work. I mean, look at this scene. Even Willy Wonka looks like he's bored and just wants to get every scene over with. The plus to this movie? Well, it's kind of entertaining in how revoltingly bad it is. My favorite scene was probably the bizarre song amalgamation given to Slugworth. For some reason, combining Veruca's original song with his own evil bad guy premise, even though Slugworth was not originally a villain. Tom and Jerry Willy Wonka is easily among the worst book-based animated movies.
You get nothing! You lose! Good day, sir!
And for the second best, the How to Train Your Dragon trilogy, based on the book series by Cressida Cowell. Well, the trilogy's complete, and now we can see that DreamWorks managed the impossible. They managed to make 2 sequels that were all arguably just as good as the original. Apart from Toy Story, I really can't think of many other movies that have ever done that. This probably sounds like an airy-fairy term, but I really do think these movies are wondrous. In number 1, when Hiccup first soars into the sky with Toothless. In 2, when Toothless is fighting his instincts and trying not to kill Hiccup. In 3, Hiccup discovering the vast hidden world of the dragons. There's a sense of dignity to the Dragon series that I simply don't feel to this degree in any other DreamWorks movie. While I do have some pet peeves, I mean, the minor characters can feel very shallow, but the main characters make for an expansive, nuanced world. Hiccup lives in a world where he strives to be a diplomat. Yet unlike Steven, he can't reason with everyone, and sometimes he has to compromise, and I respect that. Hiccup strives to find peace among the people where possible, and that is so much more realistic. And to me, that's what the Dragon series is great at doing. Painting a vibrant wonderland with still some realism to it. I think it's because of dragons that DreamWorks has a more sophisticated reputation today.
Thanks, bud.
I really enjoy the Dragon movies, and I get immersed in them, but most of all, I respect them.
You never cease to amaze me, bud.
And before we get to the number 1s, just a couple of quick honourable and dishonourable mentions. For the honourable mentions, Coraline, based on Neil Gaiman's book. Another classic from Henry Selick. Coraline discovers an alternate reality that gives an amazing demonstration of the unsettling nature of the uncanny valley that eventually turns into a nightmare she has to escape from with her cunning and wit. But I've already talked about Coraline in the creepiest animated movies, and as the critic and I already said, It's very creative and a must-watch of Selleck's films. Fantastic Mr. Fox, based on the book by Roald Dahl. I discussed this one in Best and Worst Claymation Movies, so I decided to leave it off the list. But needless to say, it's one of the most faithful adaptations of a book I've ever seen on film, adding a real layer of nuance to the characters and making it something unique, breathing new personality and depth into the characters with the well-chosen voice acting and atmospheric shots.
Why? Why did you lie to me?
Because I'm a wild animal.
Charlotte's Web, based on the 1973 book. Basically, Charlotte the Spider works to save the life of her friend Wilbur the Pig with some unique, spider art. She does save him, but then dies on screen in what is still a pretty confronting memory from my childhood. Spiders, well, they don't live as long as pigs. But Charlotte in particular is one of the most graceful, elegant cartoon characters I've ever seen. She also has a very memorable voice.
Versatile means I can turn with ease from one thing to another, but I feel peaceful. Your success today was, to a small degree, my success.
Something that fascinates me about the animation is they actually make Wilbur look middle-aged as the years pass. A middle-aged pig. It's such a funny look, but it works.
This hallowed doorway was once the home of Charlotte.
Howl's Moving Castle. Damn, this movie is awesome. Technically, this easily counts as a best to me, but I don't tend to include anime on my lists. Beautiful story, wonderful characters, great English dub. I just love so much about this movie. And Christian Bale makes the best Howl ever.
Don't hold it against them. They're actually not all that bad. Where to? I'll be your escort this evening.
Watership Down, based on the book by Richard Adams. Serious, brutal, but powerful. The music score's great, the animation looks exceptional for 1978. The script and the dialogue are sophisticated too, but obviously, as you may have heard, lots of violent imagery and dying rabbits. Not one for the young kids, but it definitely gets my thumbs up. The Captain Underpants movie. There's a whole lot of elements I like about the Captain Underpants movie, and this is coming from someone who hasn't seen the original book. The speed of the overblown jokes, the surprisingly detailed body language, the stylization of the animation, and the general light-hearted, tongue-in-cheek tone. It's actually a very faithful adaptation of the books. For a movie that's essentially just a guy running around in his underwear, it's surprisingly enjoyable and not cringeworthy. The team that worked on this obviously worked very hard to get the tone right. Now obviously, I'm the wrong demographic for this movie, but I still thought it was okay.
Considering they're completely implausible, juvenile, and filled with the lowest form of wit, potty humor, they're actually pretty funny.
And for the two dishonorable mentions, Boss Baby. Nope. Although this one is based on a book, I discussed it in abysmal Netflix cartoons, and that's enough for me personally. I'm obviously not the right demographic for this show. This movie's just too awkward and weird for me to even enjoy discussing. Home. Ugh, DreamWorks just doesn't get more cheesy, inoffensive, and saccharine than this. If you like it, that's great, it just doesn't at all appeal to me. If you're curious of my extended thoughts, I talk about it in Worst and Best DreamWorks movies. Anyway, on to the number ones. And without a doubt, the number one worst book-based animated movie is Straczynski and the Mysterious House, based on the German audiobook. Behold, now this is supreme garbage incarnate. This isn't even a movie. This is a crime scene. The crime? Vandalizing the minds of whatever impressionable child might have been unfortunate enough to gaze upon it. With what is essentially the equivalent to putting the entire legacy of animation through a wood chipper. Even the trailer voice acting is alien, just completely broken.
You don't know that, not at all!
The 3D animation is so lazy, so incredibly unprofessional and terrible. It looks far more like a Lovecraftian existential horror film than it does a children's animated movie. Developed by Hope Animation, but truly, there is no hope for this animation. Or this company, or this writing. Oh, jeebus, the writing.
Come and read us, 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 read us.
I am jaw-dropped at the pure lack of quality in this writing. A bunch of what I think are animals go into a house and learn the evils of reading.
Oh, how sad. They really should have been more careful with these. They're too deeply immersed in these books.
Yes, you guessed correct. This is a religious movie. And I'm sorry, because if I'd known about this at the time, I definitely would have added this to worst religious animated movies. I mean, how could I actually manage to buy this from an active company in 2019 that claims that books are evil? I had to read to buy this. I had to do research and learn. It's just, In fact, our horrendously animated abominations are put under a dark, evil spell by reading. Even the names, guys, the names. Elbow the Rabbit. What kind of name is that? Shockingly, all the characters sound like humdrum robots.
Spooky.
And the voice actors sound like they're lamenting their life decisions, reading lines for this movie.
They're like Frozen. Could you please help them?
Every line delivered sounds unfathomably awkward. Like, Food Fight is looking more and more amazing the more we plummet to the depths of this garbage. Just the concept of this movie is so bad. Reading is bad? Expanding your knowledge of the universe is evil? Learning that people might be wrong on some things? You see, according to this movie, reading turns you into a big, sluggish, overweight layabout. Did I show you this thing yet? Because you really need to see it only once to know just how abysmal things have gotten. This large worm monster here became this way because he read a book.
He lost his slender form and became what he is now. Big and fat and slow.
Jeebus forbid he might have read 2 books. You could easily add this to my worst animated movies as well. It's down there. I can easily call Straczynski and the Mysterious House the worst book-based animated movie. And I personally think the #1 best book-based animated movie is The Iron Giant. Damn, there's so much I remember about this movie. The scenery, the animation style, specific moments. There's very few kids' movies I can think of that pack the emotional impact that Iron Giant has. I first saw this one when I was about 9. Specifically, some of the moments between Hogarth and the giant just seem timeless to me. You've probably seen the story before in E.T. Basically, a boy finds an alien robot and a paranoid government hunts them down. But I would personally take this over E.T. any day. What's interesting though is it isn't the alien giant teaching the boy, it's the boy teaching the alien giant. He teaches them basically about empathy, good, evil, and the beauty of existence. And that's still something I can look back on at any age and still find fascinating to witness.
He's not like you. You're a good guy. Like Superman.
There's a genuine emotion and message that never results to saccharine schmaltz. There's no cutesy animal sidekicks, no one bursts into song randomly. It's just a story about a boy and his robot. That's it. I even still vividly remember the side characters in this movie. Hogarth's mother and his, I'm gonna guess, future stepfather Dean are both really enjoyable characters. And there are moments I just drink in the atmosphere of the scene so well. Like when Dean, Hogarth, and the giant are all out in the junkyard together.
So, where'd he come from?
He doesn't remember. He's like a little kid.
Little, yeah.
Or Hogarth's alarm when the giant touches the dead creature. It doesn't necessarily try and give us answers. It just shows us what is, and lets us draw our own conclusions. Iron Giant is a beautiful character to me because he personifies so much of the human struggle. Being a weapon capable of great harm by nature, and having to control that nature. Through the Iron Giant, we can see the human condition, the visceral and the intellectual, colliding.
I know you feel bad about the deer, but it's not your fault. Things die. It's part of life. It's bad to kill, but it's not bad to die.
The film sets the atmosphere of the 50s perfect as well. Although the human drawing style isn't my personal favourite, the scenery is still gorgeous to look at. My problems with the movie? Well, my biggest complaint is probably Kent, the government agent. He can be a really unlikable villain, and by the end he's just annoying.
Screw our country! I want to live!
I feel like the character is just a hindrance to the core of the film, which is mostly just Hogarth and the Giant's interactions. I feel like I could just watch these two interact for the whole film and still be relatively satisfied. You don't need a villain that much. There's no pop culture jokes, no flashy animation to try and keep the kids awake, and no annoying song and dance numbers. It's just a boy and his giant. The Iron Giant is a near perfect, simple, balanced film, and I can't think of many out there like it. I personally consider it the #1 best book-based animated movie.
Aw, come with us. It'll be fun.
Well, thanks for checking out some of these book-based animations with me. Looking back, I believe the quality of the successes outweighs the damage of the failures. And even the failures remind us of just how great the original books were. And although big movie budgets can be nice, I don't think even millions of dollars can compare to a movie's earnest message. And if you think I missed any book-based animated movies, feel free to leave them in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.